for being here. Really excited to have you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you became interested in body intelligence?
Well, I think we actually met in one way through our mutual interest in body intelligence, because I have been trained as a dance movement therapist and have been interested in the language of movement for many, many decades. And when I met Gay, he came to teach a workshop at my graduate school on breath work and really on body intelligence and body language. And so that's really the place where we connected almost 40 years ago.
Wow, I didn't realize that's where you met.
Yeah.
Yes, and we both had mentors of various sorts. A very famous mentor of Katie's was the legendary dance therapist Mary Whitehouse, and I'd studied with various Reichian therapists and bioenergetic therapists, and as well as doing my own inquiries. But I want to also credit one of my mentors, Jack Downing. He was a great psychiatrist. He was a Rolfer. He did all sorts of different things. And I had the great pleasure of getting to know him in the 1970s. And then we maintained our friendship up until the time he passed away in the 90s. And so he was the first person, listen to this connection because it's so much how life works. I went to Jack for Rolfing, and he was Rolfing me, and he happened to be a big fan of dance movement therapy. I did not know this, but he belonged to a dance movement therapy group, and he loved dance as an expression, as well as a healing modality. And so I didn't know all this about him at the time, but when he was Rolfing me, he said, you know, one thing that you might enjoy is sometime when you have some kind of issue or problem, instead of thinking about it, turn on some loud music and dance to it. and I said, well, I don't know how to dance. And he said, well, no, you don't need to know how to dance. You just sort of move your body around while the music is on. And so
just any way you want.
Just any way you want. And so I remember I went home and I had just bought the new Pink Floyd album, Dark Side of the Moon. Wow. It was brand new at the time. That'll tell you when this was. And the big disc. And I brought it home and I put on that album. And I just began to do that. And it was so liberating to me. Then I discovered that there was this whole field called dance movement therapy. And I immediately joined a group, kind of a casual group that met often on Friday nights. And I really took to it. And that led me to meet some of Katie's colleagues, but I never met her at the time. So it was amazing how these two matrices sort of began to overlap. And then thankfully they overlapped completely in 1980.
Wow. How do you use movement to help people get in touch with themselves and connect with others?
Well, the way that you move expresses so much more about what's going on for you than just what can come out your mouth, because most people think they live from here to here.
Yes.
And so what we give a lot of attention to is what's happening in a person's body as they're speaking or as they're interacting, or even just as they're moving across the floor, because your posture and your gait and
right.
whether you complete the whole arc of the movement or get started and then stop halfway, there's so much that's contained in how your body is expressing itself. It's a wonderful portal into the inner frontier, into what's really going on inside me. How am I feeling and how am I showing up? And one of the things we look for are those two things matching? So is what the person's saying matched by what they're doing in their body? And my favorite example of how they don't match is something that my mother once shared with me about how her mother communicated with her, which was, honey, I love you. I love you. And so the I love you is not exactly matched by the boom. And very often people have that not matching, but they're not aware of it.
I first grew interested in body language when I was a kid. and one thing in particular always fascinated me. I think when it started, my mother was a politician, and she lived, breathed local politics. That was her great passion. She eventually became the mayor and served quite a long term as the mayor of this small southern town. And the thing that entranced me, though, is how quickly she would go from mother to mayor. And she would be in the middle of berating my brother and I for some terrible thing we'd done. And this was a pretty frequent event, but the phone would ring and it would be somebody from the city hall, and she would instantly become mayor, and she would have a whole different set of body language. And that always fascinated me. I didn't have the words to articulate it at the time, but I remember seeing it, and I began to notice it more and more and more. The thing that you'll often see us do too is, people have movement signatures. Like a person may, like in the famous Bill Clinton clip of I did not have sex with that moment, he touched his nose, which is a common liar's flag. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those classic ones that goes back into literature even. And so from the Pinocchio tale, that your nose will grow longer. And, so the act of owning all of these things is such an important thing. And many people disown their body language. They disown their various things about their bodies. They disown that one shoulder is way higher than the other, or
they have their head way forward,
that they always scratch their left ear when they talk about a certain subject. Many people tend to minimize those things, but we are on a crusade to make people understand that body language is the language. And it's been here long before we are. And so people have been reading body language for a lot longer than we have. And so you got to understand the evolutionary heritage of this, that it's a tool of communication, just like this stuff is, and this is a great elaboration of it. And we've looped a few more loops in our brains since then. We've got a few more wrinkles up in our gray matter, but it's the same kind of thing, and we need to learn how to speak our gorilla as well as speak our gazelle.
Yes. Ooh, that's right.
I often have that response when he speaks. Ooh. There's another aspect of the whole exploration of your body language and your body experience, which shifts most people's experience of being critical of themselves. Most people are trying to monitor or control or fix, improve, get rid of what's going on here, because we've learned from the culture over 2,000 years that this is bad, body is bad, head is good.
Yes.
And so whenever something's going on in the body, most people go, uh-oh, there's that uh-oh response. And so part of the exploration is to cultivate curiosity, because there is as much of a frontier in here as there is out in the galaxies. There's infinite opening ways to know yourself better, ways to be present with yourself that create a kind of rich inner life that I think so many people are missing, because they only look at themselves or study themselves from a critical standpoint, rather than what might my stubbing my toe be trying to tell me, or always being late, or feeling this kind of anxiety when anybody asks me a question. And those things are really gateways into becoming more and more present with ourselves.
So one thing that's beautiful, and I completely agree that we have this whole superpower within us that we don't realize we have, and it's helping people gain that awareness, which is why I'm putting on this video series, because I think it's so important. And I want to ask you about the breathing piece, because I think breath work is one way for people to easily get, or more directly get into touch with what's going on. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, that's been a particular fascination to me. In fact, I'll invoke the name of Jack Downing again, because it was in a session with him that I broke through into kind of getting my breathing free so it could really nourish me rather than being kind of trapped in a jacket of my own weaving and a suit of armor of my own manufacture. And so I hadn't realized that I had imposed myself in a certain prison, and he helped me unprison myself. And in that rush of feeling, I had this electric feeling through my body that I'd never really felt before. And I remember thinking, my goodness, this has been there all the time, you know, because my scientific brain was looking at the phenomenon of it and saying, wow, how did I get here? Well, I got here through total participation with some feelings that were incredibly deep for me. And I let myself feel these feelings for the first time. And that brought forth this rush of feeling. And so I was very entranced by that experience. And I began to use it in my therapy and healing work with people. It became a benchmark of healing for me, was to help people get into that state of deep flow with their own raw creative energy. And so I devised various breathing techniques to help me get them into that state. And we, at one point before I retired, we were doing these gigantic things, you know, with 100 people breathing at the same time.
And 30 facilitators.
Oh my gosh. And it became this giant thing. And so one thing you should know about me is I have a tremendous allergy to being a guru. And so the moment I start to get followers and that kind of thing, I immediately change up. And so I retired that particular form. So, but you know, here's the thing about breathing, and you can try this out in your own life right this moment if you so desire. I invite people all the time to take 3 easy breaths, easy big breaths, and change your body position. So watch me do this. Okay, so that's 3 deep, easy breaths and change your body position. And I invite people to do that all the time, because one thing that happens in ordinary life, whether you're under stress or not, is that stress symptoms begin to accumulate in your body. Things like not being able to take a deep breath, yes, you put your hands on one right then, your neck muscles tighten up. You know, this is a chronic problem of the 21st century, and the 20th century too, is chronic tightness in neck muscles, headaches, you know, pain clinics abound. And so I think the solutions to that, I don't want to knock the field of pain medicine or anything like that, but I want to invite people also to experience natural means of going through those same kinds of deep feelings, so that once you learn that you have the power of your breath to do that, you get an incredible gift. And I feel gifted by that experience, that many times in my life I've had deep feeling experiences that I could only get through by breathing with them. Thank goodness I knew how to do that. And so I will freely and as cheaply as possible tell that to people all over the world, because I think that's one thing that human beings really need to know about.
So do you think that before, let's say a person is going into a networking event where they know nobody, or they're going on a first date, do you think taking just 3 breaths can change their physiology? What can that do for someone?
Well, first of all, it breaks the energy vapor lock in your body that often, when people are kind of feeling a certain way, they lock in on that feeling, and it's maybe an out of sorts feeling, but they can't break through the vapor lock of that. Taking 3 big, easy breaths and changing your body position breaks the energy vapor lock in your body. That's one thing. Also, it feels good. Let's not underestimate the value of feeling good.
It is kind of amazing that people
Very
don't
good.
realize they can actually feel good.
Wow, I can actually feel good. Because if you think about it, many people spend a fortune on things that are designed to make people who feel bad feel better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's hundreds of millions of prescriptions written for opioids now. And, you know, it's a gigantic problem. And I doubt that it'll be solved in my lifetime. I wish it would be, but it may not be. But anyway, it's a huge problem that comes out of the solution. And that's a very, very, very scary place to be. So as soon as possible, I'd like humanity to wean ourselves off of going through pain with things like opioids. And
because you don't really go through it.
Yeah, you'd kind of put the ceiling on it.
And, yeah, you cover it.
Yeah, and I heard the most astounding conversation in a doctor's office when I had my knee replaced some years ago. I could overhear the doctor in the next treatment room. He was having he has a loud voice anyway, and he was having a kind of a loud conversation with a patient saying, "It's high time you got off the opioids now. We've got to get you off the opioids. And I want you to try cannabis instead, marijuana." And so I was thinking, wow, this is a historic moment in human life. This is at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, by the way. This is not at some roadside knee replacement stand. So I thought, we're at a historic crossroads here where a guy's trying to help a patient get off opioids with cannabis. So, but I want to go one step beyond that. I would love to see people learn how to use the power of their breath to go through things. And, you know, we're back on the topic of body language. What people have to start noticing is when they shift from easy breathing to fight or flight breathing. Mm-hmm. Just notice that one little transition. You'll notice that your breath comes up higher in your chest and it goes faster when you're in fight or flight breathing. If you keep your eye on a couple of little symptoms like that, you'll know right away. And then your job is to deepen and slow your breath and get your mind busy doing what it likes to do, which is figure out what was scaring you or making you angry or stressing your organism in whatever way. So that's the way to use your mind, is to conjecture about things like that. But first we have to get good at noticing the information itself, whether our neck is tight or whether our forehead is bunched or whether we've got a scowl or whether we've got our breath up here. These are the fundamentals. And it's basically, I've taught this to first graders, and I tell you, they can get it. So there's no reason that a normal adult can't understand their own body language. And so we're on mission to teach that. And as entertainingly or annoyingly as it takes.
Yes, it's so simple. It's beautiful. It's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the mind likes to complicate. So there's this great quote by the physicist David Bohm that I really love. The mind makes up the world and then says, "I didn't do that." So our mind forgets that it's part of our body and thinks it's like the emperor and everything else should be subservient. And I think at a very basic level, what we're doing is encouraging people to locate themselves again in their whole bodies, head to toe, that what's going on in your feet is just as important as what's going on in your head. And learning how to, very simply, if you're not moving, move. And if you're not breathing, breathe. And then everything else comes out of that, because when you're breathing and moving, then flow occurs and you experience yourself as really being in charge of owning and creating your own life rather than always being at the effect. So if you're inside of yourself and noticing and being with yourself, you have a much better chance of, 1, feeling alive, 2, enjoying flow, and 3, being able to connect with others authentically so that you can actually create connection and collaboration rather than the rigidity and the kind of posturing that people learn when they're scared.
I had a thought a while back that I wanted to be sure and mention the historical context of this. And this goes into history a little bit, and I know some people are allergic to history, but this is kind of an important little bit of history. The philosopher Descartes kind of made up the split between mind and body. He decided, I think, therefore I am. This stuff up here is what is telling me who I am. That's the important stuff, and the body is there to support it. And then Thomas Edison comes along a couple of hundred years later and says, the only function of the human body is to carry the head around. And so there was this historic split between mind and body, so that beginning with Descartes, but I wanted to mention him because it's the first time it really shows up that I could see in philosophy or literature. And here's the interesting thing that not a lot of people know, which is before he published that paper, Descartes had a series of 3 dreams that the left side of his body was crippled. And the left side of the body is the one that people associate with emotions, with feeling. And so here is Descartes dreaming that he is in the process of crippling his own body by bringing forth this split between mind and body. So I thought that was a fascinating moment when his body was trying to tell him not to do that.
Right. And that's been going on, that split has been going on and has been affirmed for so many centuries that, and you can see the result of that, anywhere you look, that people don't know what they're feeling, don't know how to communicate about what they're feeling, feel scared of what they're feeling. We're in what I call a fear trance, so that people are not actually able to experience the flow of aliveness. And so a lot of our work is about noticing habitual places where you stop yourself from moving or stop yourself from breathing, and then simply explore those with curiosity and with presence. Because when you have one experience of connecting, oh, I stubbed my toe, oh, I was angry and I didn't communicate about that, whoa, and then that gives us each power over really exploring and bringing the unconscious to consciousness so that we can live lives of choice and freedom. Hey, and also I want to go and get our book to show.
Oh.
Yeah, because people might not know about this book, so I'm going to let you continue talking while I go get it.
We've been kind of dominating the conversation today. You got anything to say, Judy?
No, I just think it's beautiful. I feel like we are like-minded in our beliefs and our feelings about things. I've been working with a lot of very technical, brilliant minds. And what I find the most challenging is not the technical piece that they're trying to solve. They have the most struggles with just collaborating with each other. Working together and communicating and working as a team and being motivated. That should be the easy part. The technology should be the hard part. But in this case, the technology is, they're kicking butt with the technology. It's the getting along piece and the interaction piece.
Yeah, Katie was telling me one time she did a consulting job at back east in Bell Labs or someplace, and she worked with a team that, well, you're here, the soccer story.
The soccer story. You remember?
Okay.
I'm not sure I remember. The soccer story.
Okay. Well.
Oh yes. Okay, I got it. I was working with them, and I was having them diagram their days. Each of them, I went to the board. And
a group of engineers.
A group of engineers who had worked together for some of them 8 years, and they were diagramming their days because I wanted to find out what their points of connection were. And in doing this activity, 2 of the guys found out that their sons had been on the same soccer team for years, and they didn't know that.
Can you believe that? I mean, these guys worked on the same team. You know, talk about siloing your life. You know, that's an extreme, but that's a lot of what we've learned. So we got to get beyond that and realize that we are people of the whole, W-H-O-L-E. We are people of immenseness, like our great poet Walt Whitman said. Do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I am large and contain multitudes.
Yeah.
We're all large and contain multitudes. And just like a violin has many different strings on it and can play different notes, we need to be open to all of our notes. And so many people are closed down to one side of themselves.
They don't like that.
Yeah.
People don't like me when I do that. Or people have always told me I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or I'm too sensitive. And so all of those messages, we get smaller and smaller and more trying to fit in rather than who am I? What am I feeling right now? What do I want to say? And I wanted to show you, this is our book from a couple of decades ago called At the Speed of Life, which is all about body language and body intelligence and breath and movement.
And is now available in digital form for the first time. I know because I put it there. And so wherever you buy books, look for At the Speed of Life.
I particularly love books on that I can listen to because I'm always walking my dog. And that's when I do my best listening to books and thinking, and just a lot of the movement really helpful for me.
I hear that from a lot of people.
I hear that from a lot of people. I've never listened to an audiobook yet. So that's something.
But I'm really glad that people do, because for me, even when I'm just exercising, I get more creative ideas. So some of us, when we're moving, that's where things really connect, us kinesthetic learners.
Yes. Well, this is so great and wonderful. And I just want to make an observation that to watch you two together is really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Complement each other. Look at each other adoringly and sweetly. Oh, it's very sweet. The way you listen. The way you allow the other to speak and you listen patiently. It's a beautiful thing to observe. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for the good questions, and many blessings to you on your work.
I'm going to go out and thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to go out and get the book. I'm going to download it so I can listen to it.
Yeah, great. Super.
Thank you. And I hope, are you doing any retreats or courses?
Yes. In fact, we had, Margaret has sent you some information about what we're going to be doing. We have a big summer training twice a year. We have a larger training where we teach people both body language, but also this summer, it's really the body language of relationship. So how people, for example, know whether they want to get close or whether they want to have individual time. What's the rhythm of your relationship? Do you initiate, or are you always waiting? There are all of these wonderful things to explore through moving and breathing that can help people enhance their relationships. And that's what we'll be up to this summer. But if you go to our website, you can find all of our seminars.
So a big summer training and a big winter training usually, and then a few seminars here and there in Europe and various places.
Beautiful. And the website, can you just tell us what?
Yes, it's Hendricks.com, Hendricks.com.
Beautiful. And she told me about your Body Intelligence Facebook group, which I wasn't aware of.
Yes, we have a new Facebook page that's called the BQ Hub. So if you go to Facebook and you just type in the BQ Hub, we have daily tips about how to enhance your body intelligence, and articles and research and how it can benefit your life and your work and your relationships.
Beautiful. I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us today, and for all of the beautiful wisdom that you've all shared with us today, and in all of the work that you've done. It's really
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for doing this. It was very fun.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.